I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning in a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back. It's been a couple of days since I've been on the show. I want to thank everybody for waiting and tuning in. We got some interesting news that have come out today. In fact, I'm actually going to have 2 shows today, not necessarily given how long it's been since I've been out, but just because, well, that's just how the schedule goes. So we have, we're going to be talking about Bryan Kohberger twice today. First, we're going to talk about the new documents that just got dropped. A lot of interesting stuff that's in there. A lot of the defense's game plan of how they're going to perhaps, go against what the prosecution may be playing against them. Through this, you can kind of see what the prosecution's game plan is. So many new documents. And the crazy thing is these documents were dropped from the defense's side, and these are supposed to be in favor of their client. However, in all of them, if you read between the lines, or a majority of them, in many of them, you can see that it's not going well for Bryan Kohberger. And then a little bit later, we're going to have Jennifer Coffindaffer, former FBI agent, on. She's going to be talking to us about the FBI involvement. I have so many questions for her about FBI's involvement in this case, when they, how and why they would have gotten involved. Some of the things about the IGG, things about, what Howard Bloom may have mentioned, where, at one point, apparently the FBI knew that Bryan Kohberger was the guy, but they didn't give over the information. I think there may have been a jurisdiction question behind it. Those are the questions that I want to ask her. I want to ask her, why didn't the FBI take over? Why isn't the FBI, the responsible party if you have a person who's committing a crime that occurred in Idaho, but he lives in Washington? Did he do any planning in Washington? If he did, would that can be considered for an FBI involvement in this being a federal case versus a state case? So many questions like that. So if you're interested in those type of things, please make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, because that'll get the algorithm going. That'll tell YouTube that you like this content, you like this channel. And then next time when I go live, it'll populate for you. I know a lot of folks have come in and said, hey, I didn't get notified that you went live today. It's because you didn't like. Hit the like button. Let YouTube know that this is a channel that you like. That way they will kick in the algorithm and let you know. All righty. With all that out of the way, let's get this going. And I'm not going to look at every single document that was dropped. Obviously, there was some that were a couple of pages, just didn't really say anything. There was a few that were a lot of pages. There was one that was an IgG page that was like 30 pages long. I kind of skimmed through it. I started highlighting some things in it. But to be honest with you, when it comes to like the IgG and stuff like that, I'm not a scientist. I'm not any of those type of things. And for me to go in there and try to give you some sort of high level explanation of those type of things would be ignorant, for one, on my part, and two, probably very inaccurate. And so to me, what's important when it comes to the IgG is the legality of it. How is it legal or how is it not legal? Not versus how it works, right? Because that's kind of where I have stood in it. And from what I understand is the IgG was never going to be used against Bryan Kohberger. It wasn't used in any of the warrants. It wasn't used in any of those things. And so for the defense team to come in and want things thrown out based on the IgG, even though it wasn't used for any of those items, to me, it didn't seem like it ever was going to be a possibility. And so that's where I stand on it. I read through it. They're talking about so many things about scientific stuff. Not a scientist, y'all. I'm sorry. I'd have to get a scientist on to explain those things. And that's where we'll go from there. But let's start off here with what I do know and what I'm a little bit more experienced in. And this is witness testimony. I've taken a lot of witness testimony and spoken to witnesses many a times. So we'll talk about those type of things and everything else. That there's quite a few documents. So that being said, let's get into it. First one is going to be the witness identification by bushy eyebrows. Now, Bryan Kohberger and his defense team are going to try to get this thrown out. Now, they basically stay in here that, and I'll read this. It goes, in this case, the description provided by DM is unreliable and should be excluded, although she has never identified Mr. Kohberger. Testimony by DM from the witness stand describing bushy eyebrows while Mr. Kohberger sits as the accused at trial will be as damning as her pointing at him and saying he is the man that did this. I don't think that's true. You know, I mean, one would say that just by having him sitting at the table being accused of this crime, that the jury would be like, you know, that would be just as damning as somebody saying he's the one that did this, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're accusing him of doing this. Now, she has not identified Mr. Kohberger, and the defense will have its opportunity to ask their questions and say, did you identify Mr. Kohberger as the person that you saw? And that's not going to be the case. She's going to say no, because unless she lies, you know, but if she's telling the truth and she goes based on the information that she has here that she said earlier, and none of those things have changed. I mean, maybe she went and did some hypnosis or something. I don't know. And maybe she recalled more memories. And now she can identify him. Is that possible? I don't know. I would find that more kind of iffy. But if she goes up there and says, I still can't identify him. The only thing that I saw was a man wearing a mask, and I saw the eyebrows and the eyes. How is that going to be detrimental to Mr. Kohberger's case? I don't see that being the case. The only thing that DM statements are going to do is they don't identify Bryan Kohberger. They don't exclude him. So when you look at all and it's going to have to, it's not that big of a piece of evidence on its own. It has to deal with the entirety of the case, with the entirety of the evidence, is where this piece of evidence is going to have a role. So just because you can't exclude him doesn't mean that he committed the crime. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of, Caucasian males with bushy eyebrows that fit that build. It's the other stuff. All right, out of all those other Caucasian males that fill that build, did any of those guys, were they out and about at this time, or do they have an alibi for this specific date and time? Do they have a white vehicle without a front license plate access to them? Do they have Bryan Kohberger's DNA on their person somehow? Because they would have had to have had that on their person and transported that into the house on the knife sheath. So there's so many things that would have had to have gone down for it's almost an impossibility. But specifically just the eyebrow stuff, it just doesn't exclude him. If it would have been differently, if she would have came out and said he was shorter, stocky, kind of chunky, maybe Hispanic or African-American, then at that point you have exclusions. You have things that are excluding him from being the possible person. And the defense has a much, they have something to work with, but that's not the case in this situation. Not at all whatsoever. And they talk about, why she's not reliable. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that she probably had just fallen asleep. I mentioned this many months ago, maybe even 2 years ago when this crime occurred, that the specific time in which that this occurred and how intoxicated the victims potentially could have been, entering in at about 4 o'clock after about 2 hours of sleep, being intoxicated. That's when you're probably in your deepest sleep. That's when REM is kicking in. And, things are going to be kind of tricky. And from what we understand from here is that Bethany or Dylan suffered from like nightmares and things of that nature, that could affected what she thought was real or fake. And this could be an example as to why the 911 call wasn't made. But let's read the relevant facts. This says here, on November 13, 2022, DM was inside the house when the murders occurred and saw a figure dressed in black. When she picked out her bedroom door at around 4 a.m., shortly after seeing the intruder, she went downstairs to Bethany Funk's room. The two girls fell asleep. Roughly 8 hours later, a 911 call was made from Bethany's phone at 11:56 a.m. More than 8 hours after seeing the intruder, DM was interviewed by law enforcement at the scene and at the police department. It was confusing to DM that the intruder looked at her but did not come towards her or say anything. When describing the intruder to Officer Nunez at the scene, she described the height, build, and clothing of the intruder. Her description did not mention eyebrows. When she called Bethany, before going downstairs to Bethany's room, DM stated she was kind of in and out of it and was really tired. Later, when she was interviewed at the police department by Detective Maury, inquired about facial features and asked DM. Now, when they say later, let me go back up here. Later, when she was interviewed, it's the same day. It's just not at that same moment. And how long of later, right? This could be just like, all right, this one detective talking, and then I'm talking, and I'm the second detective. And one detective getting some bits of information, then I go, all right, let's talk a little bit more about the details. Because it doesn't say the next day or on this other interview. It just says later she was interviewed at the police department. Detective Maury inquired. It does seem like it was a different interview, but the way that the defense writes things and how they say things, it may not be the way that is. Just and trust me, I have this whole thing where I even wrote the word "wow" on it, just because of how incredible the story is when it comes to the purchasing of the K-bar knife. It's so ridiculous. Well, anyways, that's when she mentioned the eyebrows was later on when she was talking to Detective Maury about facial features. Let's see. She did not know the color of the intruder's eyes or eyebrows. Everything was kind of blurry, like I don't fully remember it. During the morning interview, DM again mentions that she was in and out of it because she was so tired. So this is another reason why I think a lot of the reason why the 8-hour delay happened. If give me 1 second, I'm gonna update this real quick. If basically what I'm doing now, I'm just going to, because I can't see the chat on this side, so I'm going to move some things over real quick, guys. So bear with me while I do that, so I can see what you guys are saying at the same time. Didn't want to do that. Come back over here. All right, there we go. Now I can see what you guys are saying too. Apologize for that. Okay, so she described the eyebrows a little bit later when asked about the facial features. Okay, so she did not know the color of the eyebrows. Everything was blurry. She was drunk. She was intoxicated. And in the middle of the night, very sleepy, very tired, not knowing what was real, what wasn't real, seeing somebody look at her but not say or do anything. I mean, it just sounds like a lot of questions, right? Now, she does mention going to Bethany's room, and then I think there was maybe even a phone call that may have occurred towards Bethany. You remember when they say the phone downloads and stuff like that, downloading of the phones as far as trying to determine the time point in which when this crime was committed? That's going to be in this, part of that scenario, right? Even though Dylan may have been out of it, not knowing it was real or false, her phone call can be tracked and traced. And so they can figure out what time that was and and determine more or less when this crime was committed to pinpoint it. And you corroborate that with the video from outside, which we do finally got some evidence of and pictures of. All right, let's continue though. It says here on pictures on November 13th, 2022, law enforcement took pictures of DM's room on November 13th and November 19th, 2022. On the walls of her room were many pictures of eyes with prominent eyebrows, many of which she had drawn. Some of the eyebrows are heavy, voluminous. You can tell I don't deal with a lot of things with hair. Voluminous. I don't know how to say that. Puffy or perhaps subjectively bushy. I could tell you that Ann Taylor or one of the other attorneys wrote this. According to Detective Lake, he found an artwork of human figures with an emphasis upon eyes. Eyebrows were pinned on cork boards. I wonder if she did eyebrows. I wonder if that was her thing. You know what I mean? If she did everybody's eyebrows, if she was the eyebrow person and the cosmetologist. There you go. What does that mean? She saw eyebrows. There's eyebrows in her room. Is the defense trying to confuse or trying to say that maybe she's confusing the two? With everything that's in her room, she's drunk, she's tired. There's eyebrows everywhere. Some of them are bushy, and she's confusing them for Bryan Kohberger's bushy eyebrows. Well, there's a lot more evidence to go along with it that says that she's probably more right than that. All right, an interview on November 17th. It goes on to say, yes, and it was Bethany's phone that was used to call 911. On November 17, 2022, 4 days later, DM was interviewed by Detective Gooch and indicated that she was really asleep and probably very drunk when she woke up around 4 a.m. Throughout the interview, DM expressed uncertainty about what she heard and saw and did not know if it was real or if it was a dream or her mind playing with her. It just doesn't make sense. DM described the intruder and told detective that she recalls seeing eyebrows, bushy eyebrows, but she did not recall the color of the eyebrows. She did not remember the eyes or the mouth, just the eyebrows. I mean, how can you tell? I mean, outside of just dark, right? Even if somebody has like red eyebrows or dark brown or light brown, I mean, in the middle of the night, it's going to be difficult to tell. It sounds like there was a light on in there, but I think it was probably just that good vibes light that was in the living room area. And so it's not very well lit. So to go into it with this to say that, oh, she saw him very clearly, but is uncertain about the eyebrows is also a little bit misleading. She did not remember the eyes or the mouth, just the eyebrows. When she saw the intruder, she thought that the intruder was about 3 feet away from her, but that could be off since she was still a little bit drunk. She did not think that she could remember enough to give a composite for a composition artist. She could recall the bushy eyebrows, but not the shape or the color of them. The detective asked if DM had anxiety, which led to DM stating that she had a lot of lucid dreams of being kidnapped or chased. She indicated that she would watch Criminal Minds and fall asleep to crime podcasts. These lucid dreams began in high school. So if this is true and there's some documentation to that, this could also explain the 8 hours. All right. If she's been dealing with something like lucid dreams where she can't tell the difference between reality and dreams, and her dreams of being such violent acts, then, during that time, I mean, and you throw in the fact that she's intoxicated, sleep deprived in the middle of the night. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. On December 1st, 2022, a half a month later, DM was interviewed again and described the intruder. She did not see his eyes, but saw one eyebrow or two. But it's just like this bushy eyebrow. I could see this like an eyebrow, this bushy eyebrow. She did not remember the color or the shape of the eyebrow. She did remember it being bushy. Man, Bryan Kohberger better walk in there with some. He's gonna walk in there with some like thin ass eyebrows. It's gonna be crazy. Just especially when DM is testifying. Because everybody's going to be looking at his face. All the jury's going to be looking at his face, looking at that eyebrow and see how prominent his eyebrows are, his stare, how he looks, that cold look that he's been giving everybody, that's all you can see. You know what I'm saying? The jury's going to pick up on that, especially during this portion. And if Bryan Kohberger committed this crime and he's sitting there and he's hearing details and she's hearing this woman that he let live recount things that are going to end up putting him away, I wonder if that's going to show on his face too. Just the anger maybe perhaps that he has throughout this point. It'd be interesting to see. I wish they would allow us to zoom in on his face, but this is why they don't, I guess. She did not remember if she saw one or two eyebrows. Throughout the interview, DM indicated that she had already had bad dreams, really bad dreams, lucid dreams, and scary dreams, and she did not know what parts of her recollections were dreams and what parts were real. When she woke up that morning, she did not fully understand what was a dream or not. In this interview, she indicated that she thought that the person she saw was a fireman. And so it's just a lot of confusion there. And when you start to read a little bit about her past and understand, where she's coming from a little bit, it's pretty sad. December 29th, 2022, a statement submitted by law enforcement supported the arrest and descriptive information in DM's interviews. DM described a figure as 5'10" or taller, not very muscular, but athletic build with bushy eyebrows. All right. Another interview on December 30th. On December 30th, after the arrest, Mr. Kohberger, DM was interviewed by Detective Lake and Detective Tolson. When she learned that an arrest had been made, she found a mugshot of Mr. Kohberger online. When asked if Kohberger was a person she saw in the house, she did not know if it was Kohberger. Was the intruder. She knew that the intruder looked at her. She knew that intruder had looked at her because of the bushy eyebrow. All that she remembered is some bushy eyebrow and all black and some sort of mask. DM provided grand jury testimony and was questioned about the intruder was wearing. She again was uncertain, and the testimony attached is attached but not quoted verbatim here. DM peeked out of her bedroom 3 times. After 4 a.m. on November 13th, the third time she saw a figure dressed in black at the scene. She described the intruder as he was a little bit taller than me. I couldn't really see much of him, but I'm almost positive he was wearing a full black outfit, and he had like this mask that was just over his forehead and over his mouth, and he didn't say anything to me like at all. End of quote. At the police department, her description of the intruder was similar. It goes, and then I opened the door again, and the guy is right there, and he's maybe my height, a few inches taller, not like skinny, but athletically built, and he has all black. He's wearing a mask that covers his forehead and here, and it goes like around, and he was white. End of quote. There were no lights on the stairs. DM was uncertain whether the kitchen light or the bathroom light was on. A kitchen light might have been on, but the twinkle light in the living room may have been on. Mortenson acknowledged that her brain might have been fuzzy due to alcohol and sleeplessness when she saw the intruder. She stated she had been drinking alcohol just hours prior to peeking out the bedroom door sometime around 4 a.m. and seeing the intruder. She was intoxicated when she rode to the house between 1:15 and 1:30-ish. Okay. This thing goes on to say that, they basically the accuracy isn't very good. Just all it does is look at his eyebrows. Let's see. Says that she doesn't know if he went out the back sliding glass door. But if she went to Bethany's room, I don't know. So here it goes on to say that roughly 8 hours after the 911 call, more than 8 hours, is when the DM provided a very limited, uncertain description. Further, by the time DM testifies in trial later this year, more than 3.5 years will have passed since murders occurred November 13, 2022. And that's been their goal, right? I mean, their goal has been throughout this entire time to delay. And the reason why it's been 3.5 years since the murders is because of the defense team delaying this thing so much. So their argument is that how long it's been is going to further limit her ability to recall what she saw that night. And so they don't want her to talk about the bushy eyebrows. I think this is not going to go anywhere. This one's Dunsky's. It's a dumb argument. And that one's out. All right, let's go to the next one. This is unnoticed 404B evidence. Comes now Bryan Kohberger through his attorney and pursuant to Idaho rules of evidence. As of the date of this filing, the state has only noticed a prior traffic stop as evidence. Mr. Kohberger moves that any other evidence to be precluded from presentation at trial. Okay, the argument is that evidence of a crime, wrong, or other act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that a particular occasion that the person acted in accordance with character. And basically, they don't want him to talk about the time that he stole the phone. They only have right now, I guess, some traffic stop. Now, what that traffic stop was going to show is that, one, he was somewhat in the area. Two, that he was the occupant of the vehicle. He was the one driving it. There was nobody else driving it. There was missing the front license plate. Probably was still at that time, probably still out of Pennsylvania, still had his registration there. So all those things are just to show that he still had the vehicle. It still was missing the front license plate throughout that time period, et cetera, et cetera. That's basically it. But they don't want the anything else that he may have done to come up as far as any other crimes. But there should be. I mean, there's the stuff that he was doing at WSU that was getting him kicked out. Those things need to be put up. I don't know if that has anything, because those aren't criminal. So that may not be what's, put in here. And so if it's not a criminal act that has to be, that is considered under that 404B evidence thing, then there's a lot of things that are still going to be in play. Like, for instance, what caused him to not be a security guard at his former high school that he was fired from or forced to resign from? Why was he forced to leave the law enforcement class thing that he was doing, when he was in high school? Remember, he didn't even finish high school. I think it was his junior year. Halfway through, they kicked him out of the law enforcement class. They put him in another class, and then I don't even think he finished the year. And the entire full next year, his senior year in high school, he was online. So whatever he did was bad enough to get him kicked out of quite a bit of stuff there and forced to do school online. What about the things that may have happened before he got to WSU? So there's a lot of stuff that's probably going to be showing up. Those are just the things that we know about. I know of several other instances that have occurred that may or may not come out. But when we get to trial, I'll let you guys know. Let's see. That's about it on that one. The next one is the make, model, and suspect of the vehicle. Bryan Kohberger and his attorneys, they want to have the vehicle. All right, so let's read this here. So this comes now. Bryan Kohberger, through his attorneys of record, hereby move this honorable court to exclude at trial testimony by any state witnesses to the make and model of the vehicle seen on the 1112 King Road surveillance footage. The state has claimed various filings and reports that FBI forensic examiner Anthony Mel identified the make and model of this vehicle seen driving in the area of the 1122 King Road in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. The state has referred to this as suspect vehicle 1, and this is it right here. Everybody's been looking for this, trying to figure out what does this vehicle look like, and what did you know? There's no sunroof. There's no sunroof. Look at that. All those guys are, oh my God, there's a sunroof on it. There's a sunroof. There's no sunroof. No sunroof. Shucks. Sucks to be him, right? So you can't see if this vehicle has a front license plate or not. This is one of the things that I was kind of concerned about, is the security cameras of like Ring video of how, they don't have the greatest of video, right? It's kind of grainy, things like that. You can't even tell if the car back there, you see the one in the very back, I'm not pointing at it on my hand like you guys can see that. The one back here at the very top corner, let me see if I can zoom in on it. We've looked at this picture before. Now maybe it's whited out, but without a car there with light coming, that license plate was visible before in other images that we've looked at. But this is at 356. This is the vehicle coming towards the residence. Again, no sunroof, slowly pulling up at 356. And here it is at 4:20 and 47 seconds. And from what I understand, this is as it's leaving away. So you have 356. Remember, it comes in at 4 o'clock and 4:04. And they talk about that he either parks or does another 3-point turn, but they can't really tell. Well, the reason why they can't tell is because it's not facing that way. It's facing the opposite direction. And right here, you can see the lights, right? And so what they're probably able to see from this video is that these some headlights that are coming back this direction start facing to the right, start facing to the left, and start doing these weird things. And then it comes forward and does a 3-point turn here and then goes back. There's not going to be a picture of the front of the house. We're not going to see anybody enter the front of the house. Like, those things aren't going to be there. It's just unfortunate. I wish there was, but it's not. And from what I understand, it around this point here is where we're going to hear a tire squealing. I got that information from a very good source, that there is a tire that is squealing at around this area. Tread marks and other things where pictures and photos and compounds of rubber were taken. Could that be matched to Bryan Kohberger's car if found in time? You know, I don't know. Would be interesting. But this is these are some images from that area. I have another one at 156 or 157-ish, and that is right around the time that the girls are getting dropped off, that we have broken down several times. And yes, this is 100% true. They are also choosing the worst possible pictures to submit with the motion. Like, this vehicle here does a 3-point turn in this area. Why not submit all of those pictures, right? Good point there, Virginia. Appreciate that. But you can see no, there ain't no sunroof on that. Surveillance footage comes from residents at 1112 King Road. It depicts the corner of King Road where the house and to the house with the cameras. That footage, lights of vehicles can be seen on Willenty Road at North Southway Road next to the neighborhood. Interested. It is clear that the identification, make, and model of the vehicle via a separate video taken at 1125 Ridge Road, which we've already looked at, right? So 1125 Ridge Road is on the way here. You know, there are cameras that capture this vehicle traveling from one area and by the gas station, and it goes through Ridge Road, and it has to go through Ridge Road to get to this area. And it is on time. You can see it. All right, you have it here at the gas station, you have it here at Ridge Road, and then you have it here over at the victim's residence. And what they're trying to say is they utilize the images on Ridge Road. And that's the one that identified Bryan Kohberger's vehicle as a 2016 Elantra. So what Bryan Kohberger's defense team is saying is that they're saying that there's two different vehicles there. That there's the killer's vehicle and that there's a 2016 white Elantra. But that those two vehicles are separate. Now, I'm not sure if they're claiming that Bryan Kohberger is in the one on Ridge Road. I don't think they are. But they're trying to claim that those are separate cars. Maybe perhaps there's something that can put Bryan Kohberger in that one on Ridge Road. I don't know. But they're trying to separate the Ridge Road image from the ones that are coming into here on King Road. So their thought is that around the same time that there was two vehicles without a front license plate in the same neighborhood, and the one without the front license plate would have had to have traveled towards the other one, the one at the gas station. The 2013 traveled through the gas station, and I don't know, the 2014, 16, 15 popped out of nowhere briefly just there. And somehow the 2013 popped up on the other side. Just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like there's three cameras that are pretty much capturing him. And that's just three that we know of. I'm sure there's probably more, but there's at least three cameras that we know of that are capturing him going into that direction. So is what it is. What's going on? Not yet, Virginia. I have some comments about that, though. I have a lot of comments about that. As far as I think the defense is trying to use that. We'll get to it. All right, let's continue this real quick. Mr. Kohberger seeks an order prohibiting the state linking the vehicle identification of the make and model of the vehicle in King Road based 1112 King Road video based on information of a car at 1125 Ridge Road and referring the vehicle as suspect vehicle 1. So they just want those two vehicles to be separate. They think that they're two separate cars, which makes zero sense. And welcome, Feisty Mama, to the DT Show's membership. We appreciate you. I have a link that I put just in the community post for all our members. You guys can go check it out and become a Discord member, and we can comment whole 9 yards and get back and forth with each other. All right, so let's close this one down. So this one's excluding Amazon click activity evidence at trial. Now, this one's a really good one. This is the one that I think really puts the nail in the Bryan Kohberger's coffin when it comes to this case. You know, if they can't get this excluded, you best be looking for a plea bargain if you're on Bryan Kohberger's defense team. So comes now Bryan Kohberger and through his attorneys, pursuant to Idaho rules, they are looking to exclude any Amazon evidence, purchase history, and Amazon click activity evidence by Mr. Kohberger. Let's highlight that. So this is to exclude any Amazon evidence, which includes purchase history and click activity by Mr. Kohberger. All right, so let's go into this. So the it first starts off with the introduction and disclose the state has disclosed Shane Cox is an expert who will testify about Mr. Kohberger's Amazon activity and his click activity. And there's just like a lot of just introduction there. In this ever-evolving age of technology, Amazon uses artificial intelligence, AI, to improve the customer experience by helping customers find products that match their interests and preferences. Amazon's AI-driven system does not just reflect searches. It actively shapes user behavior through recommendations, paid advertisements, and algorithmic reinforcement. Customer in the context of the household sharing an Amazon account is all members of the family sharing the account. In other words, purchases, searches, and machine learning ML impact all of the users in the Amazon household. So all this is basically saying is that when it comes to the search history and things of that nature, Amazon has an AI that predicts what it is that you might be interested in or products that you'd be interested into buying. And it goes based off of your search history. Now, what they're saying here is that there are multiple people that are in this household that have access to this Amazon account and that share this Amazon account. And so what that tells me is that this knife was purchased while he was still residing in his Pennsylvania home and sent to his Pennsylvania home. So he had the idea that he was going to commit a crime like this and purchased a murder weapon before he even went out to Moscow, Idaho. So just kind of keep that in mind, which is something that I think we all had already heard. I think I had told people that he had purchased the K-bar knife, and I told this to you guys a long time ago. It was April 2022 in the spring, around the same time that he had interviewed with Pullman Police Chief for the intern police job. Remember, there was that whole email exchange that went out. I want to thank you for letting me, do this for the intern, blah, blah, blah. And then he responded back. Well, in that same month, which I'm assuming he didn't get the job. Well, we know he didn't get the job then. We know he didn't get it in the fall. That was the first time that he was probably told no. He purchases a K-bar knife. Do I think that maybe that may have had something to do, not necessarily had everything to do with it, but maybe got that ball start rolling. You have a guy who clearly lacks feelings, right? Remorse, can't reciprocate those type of things. And it's documented. He said it himself. Again, it's in his defense paperwork. We're going to talk about it in a little bit, but he talks about how he can't reciprocate feelings, remorse, all those type of things. He's talking with a bunch of people on Reddit who have committed violent crimes, which, let me tell you what, most people that commit those type of violent crimes, mass murder, stuff like that, serial killers, they probably also lack those same feelings. He's probably finding a connection with those people and thinking that, hey, man, I have some of these things. I feel some of these ways, those type of things. And now you have, Pullman Police, who let's look back at what he said on his essay, that he wanted to assist rural officers with forensic technical data, whatever, right? And basically saying that he wanted to help these, hillbilly officers out in the middle of nowhere figure out how to use a phone. That was basically what he was saying. They don't know how to use a phone and computer. They're still doing the one finger tap thing, and I'm here to help them. And, you have that type of verbiage in his essay. You have him being denied twice. And you also have him purchasing the K-bar knife around the same time that he ended up using to commit the crime. Kind of tells you the buildup you're going to see a buildup there. All right. So let's see. Customer in context of household sharing, Amazon accounts, family member sharing the account. In other words, purchases, searches, machines learning impacted all users of the household account. Let's see. This means that the user's browser and purchase history may not necessarily reflect deliberate intent, but could have been shaped by Amazon's algorithm. So the fact that he was looking at K-bar knives and maybe other things that one would assume or be associated with things like a kill kit, it's probably not because he was just searching for them. It was because Amazon's AI was putting it in front of him. That's the real the real person here that did this. That's the real, villain here in this case. It's the AI, Amazon's AI. They put all the K-bar knives in front of him and all the kill kit stuff and everything else. All righty. So omni-channel shopping extends beyond a single device. A user's Amazon activity spans across phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, and even small home devices, all tracked and synchronized by Amazon. Shared household devices further complicate attribution as multiple users contribute to the search history, ad targeting, and recommendation patterns. Basically, what I was saying earlier, that everybody in the house is just, they all contributed to it. So it's not just him. And this is where I wrote, wow, because of their explanation. The states refining and limiting the Amazon click activities to specific click or specific item excludes data, taking things out of context and could tell a completely inaccurate story that causes the jury to speculate about intent. Full Amazon advertising logos and recommendation data must be reviewed to determine whether a purchase was truly user initiated or heavily influenced by Amazon's AI. The data produced does not identify the purchaser through the means other than by name or credit card. And so there's a little number 2 here, right? So they don't identify the purchaser through means, but other than by his name and his credit card. Number 2. So it says here, simply because a package is delivered to a name at a home using the credit card of someone in the house does not indicate that that person is the purchaser when it comes to the Amazon account. Meaning that somebody bought a K-bar knife and it was sent to his home, but there's 4 people who live at that house. Any of them could have purchased it, even if it was Bryan Kohberger's own credit card. Even if it was Bryan Kohberger, it's Bryan Kohberger's credit card purchasing a K-bar knife delivered to his home after looking at a bunch of different ones. And the only defense that they can say is that, hey, if one person is looking for duct tape, and this is what their whole story goes into. I don't want to read it verbatim, but if somebody looks for duct tape and you look and AI starts giving them recommendations, some people might say that they're trying to fix something, but other people might be thinking that they're trying to create a kill kit, basically, right? And one might be nefarious, one may not, but you don't know until you look at the full content or the context of everything else that goes into it. And the full context is that there was a knife sheath found tucked under the bodies of victims who were brutally stabbed to death, and his DNA was on that knife strap, on that knife sheath on the button strap, and he was out and about during that specific time, admittedly on his own, in his car. So nobody else was driving his car that night, just him. And he was out of phone service at that time. And it's his DNA that's on there. And it's his knife and his knife sheath that can't be found to test. That's the full context. It's not what else was searched. You know what I mean? I mean, he could have been searching for a bunch of other things to try to throw it off. I mean, we've already seen how far this person is willing to go to try to throw off law enforcement. So what if he was searching other things too? The fact is that K-bar knife that he purchased, where is it at? Where's the one that he purchased? Why is that one also missing? This is the biggest boom. I mean, if you're going to come and argue that he's still innocent after this, You should go see the same psychiatrist that he is, because y'all need some help. Y'all need some help. And this is what it goes into by blaming Amazon's AI. It's just ridiculous. Kohberger believes the state intends to use Amazon evidence to prove elements of its case. Well, no. In conclusion, for the reasons addressed, Kohberger respectfully requests the court to grant his wish to exclude any Amazon and Amazon clicked activity evidence because it's improperly isolated out of context, does not take into account advertising influence and omni-channel factors. Mr. Kohberger intends to offer expert testimony of David Howell at the motion. Why can't he just testify? I mean, how is somebody else going to testify how a knife sheath and a K-bar knife showed up at his house, and he's expecting somebody else to testify for him to say that, oh, it must have been Amazon AI activity. Maybe he put it in there. Maybe it was an accident. He really didn't buy it. It may have been delivered. Doesn't mean he took possession. It could have been stolen off of the front porch. A bunch of different phony excuses, right, that are going to be coming up here. But why does he need an expert to come up there and explain that for him? I mean, the only person that needs to go up there and explain, did you purchase this? Did you receive it? Did you not receive it? Is him. It is him. This is another indication to me this guy's not going to go to the stand. I know a lot of people are hoping that he's in the stand, that he's going to go in there and talk. This tells me he's probably not. The guy don't have the balls to do it. Conditions as an aggravator. Come now, Bryan Kohberger, by and through his attorney or record, hereby moves the court for an order preventing the state from using Mr. Kohberger's mental health diagnosis of autism and characteristics of his autism as evidence in this case. I'll put this one right next to the using of the term sociopath or psychopath and the term murder. I put these three together because I wanted to go through these. Mr. Kohberger has diagnosed as autism and displays characteristics consistent with autism. A comprehensive psychological evaluation of Mr. Kohberger conducted by Dr. Rachel found that Mr. Kohberger continues to exhibit all of the core diagnostic features of ASD currently with significant impact on his daily life. Mr. Kohberger shares characteristics such as social challenges, preservation, and lack of reciprocity. Basically saying that he can't reciprocate on emotions and feelings and things of that nature. These characteristics are noted by those unfamiliar with autism as not picking up on social clues. In evaluating Mr. Kohberger, Dr. Orr found that he displayed lifelong deficits in social emotional reciprocity, including limiting perspective taking and limited sharing of affected emotions of others. Basically, he don't give a dang about how other people feel. Don't care. And this was already said in his other statements that he's put out there when he was younger. And I know a lot of people had said, oh man, when he was 15, 16, 18 years old, that doesn't mean he feels the same way. Apparently he does. He does not have remorse or feelings. All right. Now, that is, in the eyes of most people, considered like a psychopath or a sociopath. But they don't want to use that term. So what, in my opinion, what they did is they went in there and they wanted to get the title of autistic so that they can use that title versus sociopath or psychopath, because of the way that's going to be perceived or preserved and also taken into by the jury. You know, the jury sees, oh yeah, you have this guy who's also lacking feelings and stuff like that. I mean, when you hear sociopath or psychopath, and then you also put into contents that this person's being accused of a quadruple homicide, well, that's going to really, I mean, it's going to be hard. I mean, that's hard to, those dots can connect fairly easily. Like, yeah, it would take somebody to have a lack of feeling or remorse to commit a crime like this, and then you kind of narrow that down. All right. So not only is there another guy who is out there that looks like Bryan Kohberger, height, weight, bushy eyebrows, drives a vehicle the same as his up to the front license plate, who's out and about at the same time as him, who has Bryan Kohberger's DNA, but also Bryan Kohberger exhibits this trait as well. That's a lot of compiling on to say that that's not him. You know what I'm saying? At this point, everything seems to be compiling on Bryan Kohberger. It just don't look right. Let's see. The state cannot argue that the factors which casually relate to Mr. Kohberger's mental issues should serve as an aggravated punishment. Blah, blah, blah. And they go into like, you can't, use the death penalty there on somebody who's autistic. Close this one out too, so I don't get lost. And this is the one that I said I was going to put next to it, using the term psychopath or sociopath. Bryan Kohberger, through his attorney's record hereby. But here's the thing. You wouldn't be able to use those terms. You can't use those terms in court unless then he's been kind of diagnosed that way. All right. You can't, I mean, like I can't go into, like, for instance, the prosecution is not going to walk in there and say, yeah, Bryan Kohberger also suffers from like from another, mental health situation, Alzheimer's or something, or Down syndrome. Like, things, you just can't make up those things. It's going to be objective. What's your proof? Blah, 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 blah. To bar the terms specifically, it means that's what he's been diagnosed with. And they don't want him to bar it. I mean, that's just my opinion of what I'm reading. So let's go for it. It says this motion here, blah, 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 allows exclusion of evidence that is unfairly prejudicial to a party. By analogy, the same principle should apply to a terminology that is unfairly prejudicial. The use of the word psychopath or sociopath during the course of a trial is unfairly prejudicial. See attached. This is improper opinion testimony under IRE 701. Neither term is proper diagnosis or unequivocally unfairly prejudicial, and request an order prohibiting lawyers or witnesses been using the term psychopath or sociopath. But those are terms, and you can't use those unless he's, they can get a doctor to say he's exhibiting sociopathic or any of these type of tendencies, right? Psychopath or sociopathic tendencies. I don't know. But you see where it says, all right, they went down the autism, way, right? They wanted to make sure that they can cut this off and say he's autistic, ASD, even though part of the ASD spectrum, from what they're saying, is the lack of being able to reciprocate feelings and emotions and stuff. That's what he's going through, because they don't want us to use these terms against them. Come on now. And then they don't want anybody to use the term murder. That one's outie. They don't want it there. They say Bryan Kohberger through his attorneys hereby move the court to prohibit the use of the word murder, murderer, murdered weapon. Similar forms of the word murder apply to Bryan Kohberger during the trial of this matter. The motion is not seeking prohibition of the word or the use of murder. It's varying forms or charging document or jury instructions. And then basically what they're saying is to label all these things like an alleged weapon as the murder weapon. We don't know it's the murder weapon. It's all schematics. I just don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think this is rather stupid. I try not to use words like that, but this is stupid. And we'll leave it at that. But they don't want him to use that term around him. Inflammatory evidence. So they also want evidence that could be hurtful to him, that are gruesome images. Basically what this says is that, I'll read it. Mr. Kohberger respectfully, that's bull crap, requests this court to order the state to not try the case through eliciting testimony and other evidence that is exceptionally inflammatory. Presenting this case as in an emotional inflammatory way is unfairly prejudicial. Although relevant evidence may be excluded and probative value is substantially outweighed in the danger of unfair prejudice, confusion of the issues, or misleading the jury. Long story short, they're saying that if they show gruesome images of the victims and, what happened to them, what Bryan Kohberger is alleged to have happened or have done to everybody, then that's going to make him look guilty. Or maybe they don't want his reaction to be seen. When those images are shown, what is his reaction going to be when he sees them? All right. Or what, it just kind of seems like they're really trying to baby this guy. Oh, we can't call him a murderer. We can't say these things. We can't show the pictures of we can't show what he did. Let's keep that quiet. And I get it, for the dignity of the victims. Yeah. Don't display that publicly, but in that courtroom, that's a different story. out there to the world and to put out there in the press. No, 100% no. But in the courtroom to the jury, 100% they need to see that. They need to see what this person did. They need to see what he's being accused of. So that way they can justify not just his guilt, but also the sentence behind it. Okay, so that's basically all that is. It says if you show them graphic pictures, if you show a jury graphic pictures, they're more likely to say he's guilty and this, that, and the third. Well, I mean, don't be committing graphic crimes. If you don't want what you did to be put out there in front of somebody to see so you can be judged, well, there you go. Now, this one's referencing Ryland Nolan and the reference to touch and contact DNA. Bryan Kohberger and his attorney moved the court to exclude testimony of Ryland Nolan, referencing touch or contact DNA. See, there's a little number 2 there. The exact location of the sheath is unclear. Both photographs of the room and the witness description of its location, the body cam footage of one of the first officers on scene show the sheath tucked under the covers next to Mogen. That's what everybody's been saying, though. That's what everybody has been saying. Now, I think that this document here, basically what this is saying is that they don't want Miss Nolan, who I believe is a rebuttal witness to the defense, that if they try to talk about like contact DNA and touch DNA, she's supposed to come up here and be a rebuttal witness for the state. But let's look at the relevant facts. A knife sheath that was recovered tucked underneath the covers next to Miss Mogen at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. The sheath was tested using standard DNR STR methods by the Idaho State Police, ISP. Item Q1.13, a swab from the sheath resulted in a single source mail profile. Profile was uploaded to CODIS database and resulted in no hits to known offenders. In its disclosure, the government has indicated that Ryland Nolan from ISP will testify as follows. Let's see. Ms. Nolan also testified to touch DNA and transfer DNA. Specifically, Nolan will testify to characteristics of the nature of the touch DNA, including how it is deposited and transferred to an item of evidence, methods used to collect and methods to preserve touch DNA samples and items of evidence, et cetera, et cetera. That's just kind of what she does. And on February 17, 2025, the state produced a second round of disclosures, including one from Ryland. As with the first disclosure, the focus of the second disclosure in touch DNA and a direct versus indirect transfer, although conceding that currently DNA technology cannot conclusively answer the question, that the state offers the following opinion. Many complicit factors can influence the likelihood of a transfer of DNA, and persistence of transferred DNA can after disposition. Current DNA technology cannot conclusively answer the question of when DNA was deposited on an item or by what mechanism. It is possible that the DNA detected on etc. item 1.1 resulted from secondary transfer. However, based on Nolan's training and experience, it is her opinion, given the quantity of the DNA detected and given the DNA profile obtained, is single source is most likely result of direct transfer. Yeah. And it goes into like a bunch of different things about DNA and contact DNA and yada, yada, yada. This will be stuff that I would rather have a scientist on for to talk about. But what I found out of here was that the knife sheath was tucked under Miss Mogen in the sheets. So it got lost. I mean, it was dark. A lot of people say, how could he have lost it? How could he have forgotten it? He put it down and he got tucked. There had to have been some sort of a struggle. We all have heard the description of what Kaylee's body looked like in the corner from her parents, or a description of that she got caught up in the corner and that, she's talked about how her injuries were more ferocious. So he had to have climbed onto the bed to have committed the crime. And in that situation is where the sheath got caught up in the covers. Pretty self-explanatory to me. So this is going to be the last two things we're going to talk about are going to be about some DNA that's inconclusive. And this is the one that I think a lot of people are getting, like, is there Bryan Kohberger DNA underneath the fingernails of Mogen's hand, or is there not? Well, let's read this and let's try to figure it out. Comes now Bryan Kohberger, and by through his attorney records hereby moves a court order limiting testimony of the statistical analysis of item 13.1 fingernail scrapings. Okay, Jade Miller testifies as the result test done on item 13.1, a swab from the left fingernail clipping from Maddie Mogenson's hand. The data is consistent with a 3-person mixture. The statistic is the likelihood ratio was calculated assuming MM was a contributor to her own fingernails. Miller tested that MM as follows, and there's a lot of it redacted. The data of the sample was that blank, as to Mr. Kohberger, GJ transcript at 365, 366. Miller tested that inconclusive means that analysis is blank, GJ's transcript at 366. Miller went on to explain that the likelihood ratio for Mr. Kohberger blank. Okay. Argument, the use of misleading language confuses the misleading fact is barred by Rule 404(2)(3). Process of evidence is overly prejudicial. The erroneous admission of irrelevant prejudicial evidence will offend due process when it renders trial fundamentally unfair. Here, expanding beyond the language, a report would prejudice Mr. Kohberger in that it might allow the jury to infer that the inconclusive data would mean that he might be included. Let's see. And this goes on to say here, in her testimony, Miller did provide a full contents of analysis. The lab report a series of LRs for item 13.1, including an LR of 0.399 for blank, 0.485 for blank, 0.2 for blank, 0.02 for blank. Lab report 7 and 3, all of these individuals sit at the same shoes as Mr. Kohberger, namely that the LR is exclusionary, but falls in the range of inconclusive. So I forgot to read this part, and I apologize. This is the comparison was done with all the individuals listed in report 7 for Mr. Kohberger in report 26. At the ISP lab, any number greater than 100 is considered conclusive result, indicating is considered a conclusive result indicating inconclusion. Any number less than 0.01 is considered a conclusive result indicating exclusion. Thus, if an LR falls within the range of 0.01 to 100, the lab cannot draw any conclusions and the data reported inconclusive. Bryan Kohberger was at what, 0.365, I guess. I think that's what this is. I could be wrong, but I'm assuming. And so when they come and talk about like all these other people, like 399, 485, that he falls here. But again, this is the defense's paperwork. It seems like at one point the prosecution made it appear, or maybe not so much made it appear, but I would say that it does appear that there's a possibility that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was under the fingernails there. Now, does prosecution still believe that after all this? I don't know. If they do, then, you know, the defense's words here, the way Ann Taylor talks can be a little bit misleading, you know, because I mean, if it's between 0.01 and 100, and he's sitting at around half of that, like at 366 to 400, that's inconclusive. I mean, that's not 0.01 or that's not 0.1. That's not on the very low end of that margin. It's up there. It is up there. Let's get those likes. Let's get those likes. Come on, guys. We got 954 people in here. Let's get the likes up. And that's across all platforms. I want to thank every one of you guys for tuning in. All righty. So of interest is what an LR is calculated for. Thus, Mr. Kohberger, inconclusive LR is similar to almost every other person from whom the LR is generated. Focus on inconclusivity may lead the jury. More importantly, Mr. Kohberger has disclosed that through further independent laboratory testing, he is eliminated as a contributor to 13.1. When Mr. Kohberger sought to overturn the grand jury indictment, he argued that Miller's testimony was inadmissible and misleading. The state argued that the testimony was presented to the grand jury as exculpatory and an effort to elicit favorable evidence from Mr. Kohberger. The independent lab testing conducted by the defense related to the item 13.1 is indeed exculpatory, and Mr. Kohberger excluded, and the state should be preluded from misleading the jury in any way. So let's just say that it's not, you know, that DNA. I think, she was with Kaylee that night. There's obvious images of her with Kaylee. It doesn't take much to get DNA underneath the fingernails, underneath somebody's fingernail. So is it just under one finger, and is that DNA present anywhere else? Right. I mean, that's the important part, because I know a lot of people are looking at, oh, well, there's blood DNA also in the house. Well, that blood DNA is located at the first floor staircase. And there was like 150 people or tons of people, not more than that have gone through that house the night before for a couple of parties that were in that block. So, I mean, and they really didn't clean up. There's images of when you look inside of that house where you can see a beer pong table, beer cans and bottles and red Solo cups and food and a bunch of other things everywhere. So to think that there's not going to be any other DNA in that house is going to be, that would be low level thinking. Now, where the high level thinking comes into play is like, all right, how do you different from, all this DNA that has been put in here? How do we differentiate the DNA that is from anybody that just may have passed through here, came through here, and the DNA that would be most likely contributed by the person that committed that crime? Well, if so many people were in that house the night before and it wasn't cleaned, I mean, like I said, there's a reminiscence of a party. And the night that this happened, they didn't have a party at that house. Remember, everybody in that area was talking about how quiet it was. It was a quiet night. There was no parties in that house. The big party was at the Sigma Chi place. And there was another party, the one where Ethan went to with his twins to begin with. And then from there, he went to the Sigma Chi party with Xana. And so there was some other big parties going on that night that weren't going on in that vicinity. So you have to go with what the killer brought in, because that wasn't touched by 150 people. You know what I mean? That was brought in by the person that committed this crime. So that's where you kind of have to say, all right, what's more important? Are we going to look at this DNA that could mean something? I mean, it's obviously not the victim's DNA. It's not mixed with the victim's DNA. It'd be different if it was a mixed DNA sample and one of the mixture was Kaylee or Maddie or Ethan or Xana. Then you have something there. Okay, well, maybe this person somehow at one point went down the first floor, right? And you got something there. But if it's single sourced or it's by itself there on a handrail on the first floor where most people enter through and come in and out and stuff like that, it's I can see why police went for, or law enforcement went for the DNA on the murder weapon, on the sheath that held the murder weapon. And this is true. Tim goes, how do you get an inconclusive sample excluding Kohberger? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. And again, that's why I said, if anybody's watching the Karen Reed case, you can tell that a defense will not be, a paid expert will go a long ways to say whatever, just to get that paycheck. It's crazy. Let's see. But they claim an independent lab did this. But yeah, I just think it's crazy. And this is the other argument. This was the first one. I probably should put this one first because this one it's about the same thing. Q13-1, fingernail scrapings. And in grand jury testimony, Jerry Miller testified the results testing done on item and the statistic report by the lab is a likely ratio, and it goes into what that is. And I don't know what this is. 368. So that other 367, I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what it is. I was assuming that could be where he was at, but doubt it. I think that's just the page number of where in that document they were at. Miller reported a statistic for this comparison. The state posed the following questions. From Miller's answer, the question is it is clear that the comparison to the world population is not an appropriate or scientific way to discuss the LR. Mr. Kohberger, that might allow the jury to infer that the inclusive data would mean that he might be included. So, I mean, it's basically just saying the same thing, except the other one said that he had gotten additional testing done and it wasn't his. That's underneath her fingernails. But I don't know. Ann Taylor has a way of words. So I'd like to see what the response is from the state, because at the end of the day, all of these documents that we read today were defense documents. So I wonder what the state would have to say to some of these, especially this one, the statistical analysis. I want to see what their response to this is, because I mean, it could be it. It could be that it wasn't his DNA and you can't use it. But it's interesting. It's interesting that they want it out. Why would they want it out? Why would they want it out if it's not his? Why wouldn't they want it in there? Why wouldn't they want to tell the jury, hey, this doesn't belong to Bryan Kohberger, this belongs to somebody else? Why would they want to throw that out? Maybe it's not as concrete as they think it is. You know what I'm saying? That's weird. It is weird. But that's all I got for you guys today. You guys got any comments? I'll take some comments, some questions, put a couple of stars if you want me to answer anything. I will be back on tonight with FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, or former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. We're going to talk about the FBI's involvement in the Bryan Kohberger case. We're going to talk to her about how, I'm going to ask her the question like, hey, why isn't the FBI involved? Or why didn't the FBI take over? Why is this a state case? If he lived in Washington, traveled to Moscow, traveled back to Washington, what happened there? Why did it take so long for them to, or maybe not so long take, what's the question I wanted to say? So according to Howard Bloom, there was some sort of issue there between the FBI and local law enforcement as far as when they were going to tell Moscow Police Department about Bryan Kohberger. It sounded like they thought maybe there was some jurisdiction issues. I think there could have been as well. So those are the kind of questions that I want to ask her. So make sure you guys check that out. As far as Forensic Frenzy, I see that I've reached out to her. I think she's doing okay. Let me see. Okay. Man, she's okay. She's just dealing with some stuff with YouTube. So it's nothing crazy. For those that are wondering, I don't know how much I'll say from what she told me, but yeah, she's doing all right. I'll see if she can come on and explain some things later. Let's see. Could the handle DNA be from the removal of the victims and or the mattresses? No, because it's unknown. So it's not victim DNA. So I doubt that. It's probably just some random person that was in the neighborhood, college student that went to one of the parties, could have had a bloody nose. I mean, remember what time of year this was? This is November in Idaho. It's pretty dry up there. If you guys remember, Bryan Kohberger's pillow had a red stain on it, presumably blood. I can almost positively guarantee that was probably a nosebleed on his part. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that's common in that area amongst folks around that time of year. I know that when, the winter times for me, that's when I get my nose starts acting up and I get bloody nose and stuff like that, especially in the drier area. So it could come from a lot of places. It's on the first floor. What evidence do we have that Bryan Kohberger ever went down there? There's absolutely none. There's no evidence that the intruder ever went down there. Everything from the sounds, from the footprints to the DNA to anything, the witness statements. Plus, there was somebody downstairs, Bethany. Did she hear anybody go downstairs? If she'd never heard anybody go downstairs or hear anybody go out that front door, and what evidence is there that anybody ever went down that way? The only person that we know that went down the first floor was Bethany. Was Dylan. So I don't know. Don't know. Let's see. DNA that is inconclusive with a mixed sample means DNA for Bryan does not exclude him, but is inconclusive due to LR from Bryan. Yeah. And that, again, I'm not a scientist, so I'm just reading basically what they're saying, which is why I say I'm not going to make an opinion on it until I see what the state has to say about all this, because this wouldn't be the first time that Ann Taylor tries to say something's exculpatory, and it's really not, nowhere near exculpatory. And so I will hold my opinions until then. But I also want to say that I recall when you recall the way this crime may have occurred, it didn't sound like it sounded like Maddie was possibly the very first victim, right? And she was asleep. And he was able to attack her. And then it sounds like he attacked Kaylee fairly quickly, because obviously she would have woken up from the first attack. And he would have been able to have used a little bit more precision on where he wanted to attack Maddie, given she was asleep on the bed. I would have found it more logical that maybe perhaps we would have found DNA on one of the other victims, and less likely on Maddie. But under her fingernails, I mean, I have no idea. You know, the LRs and all this other stuff. You know, I'll ask Steve from True Crime Web if he has any knowledge in this type of stuff. I know he's a former CSI, former forensic investigator. Maybe he could give me an insight on this. But when it comes to that, I have no idea. But yeah, forensic just emailed her a little while ago. She says she's doing okay. If it wasn't his DNA, why exclude it? Make it make sense. Exactly. That's my point. If it's exculpatory and it's not his, why exclude it? Why not have that at your beck and call? Why not bring that up and say, hey, hello? I mean, because remember, I when they wanted to throw out the vehicle, apparently it's the vehicle description, not necessarily the vehicle search. And I think they also wanted to throw out the search, but that has to do with I think the Apple tablet that they found in his car is the reason why they want to throw it out. Not necessarily because of the no DNA. And that was my argument. I was like, if there is no DNA in the car and all this other stuff, why do you want to throw that information out? That's positive information. Same thing here. Why would you want to throw that out? It doesn't make any sense. Let's see. That's possible, Andy. I mean, I'm not sure. Screams and stuff like that aren't really described on any of the, as far as the audio from 50 feet away from Xana's room, but Kaylee and Maddie were a little bit further away and up a floor. So I'm not sure if it would have picked up everything from there. It could have been, but I've never heard that before. Oh, thank you, Kelly. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. I encourage more of you to do so. But let's see. I'm eagerly anticipating Bethany's story. You can bet the defense will try to drive a wedge between her and Dylan. Well, they're going to try to say that the perpetrator went down the first floor. I mean, that's what I would try to do if I was the defense. I would say, he didn't go out the back sliding glass door. He went out the first floor door, where the blood is, of somebody we don't know who it is. That's where it went. That's the intruder. That would be my avenue of defense here when it comes to alternate theories. Is if I was on the defensive side, that's where I would go with that. And I'm fairly positive that's where they're going here. Mark this down. This is one of those psychic things I do where I predict what the defense is going to do based on their emotions and everything that they say on court. It's pretty easy to do. Anybody can do it, but they're probably going to say that he went down, the intruder went out the first floor, which is why there's blood on the handrail that belongs to somebody else. I mean, that's the only defense they pretty much have at this point, to throw in a Hail Mary. Like, no, he didn't exit that way. He exited down the first floor. Let's introduce this unknown DNA that nobody ever figured out. That's probably the game plan, if I had to take a guess. But that's going to do it for me, guys. I'm going to be back tonight, 6:30 p.m. Central. Make sure you tune in, or 6:35 p.m. Central. I'm going to have former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer on. We're going to talk about the Bryan Kohberger case. We might talk a little bit about these documents that were dropped, some of the information that came out. You know what? I do want to ask her about that LR and stuff. Maybe she might have a little bit more information into that. and get a different perspective of how an investigation is ran, perhaps through the roles of the FBI. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. For those that have said, hey, I'm not getting notified. If you hit the like button, that tells the algorithm that you like the content, and that keeps bringing you back to this channel whenever I go live. But we'll see you guys a little bit later tonight. Until next time, peace out, y'all.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show.